Welcome to the Forbidden Phoenix interview series. I'm Christelle Arcucci, the founder of the Soul Purpose Network. And this series is to support women to tap into the power of our roar, which is our full mind body potential, and unlock the power of our desire. I am delighted to have on the show with us today a dear friend, Rosey Lane, she's going to share with us that she's been through a lot in her life. And she's going to be sharing specifically about a Phoenix rising story that started at her birth. Welcome to the show, Rosey.
Hi, it's great to be here, Christelle. Thank you.
So let's jump right in. You've shared with me a bit about your story, and of course, I know a lot about your story from working with you for many years. But let's begin at the very beginning.
Yes, well, I'm the fifth of five children. Grew up on a farm in farm country in Indiana in the 1950s. I was born in 1953, Eisenhower era. So things were very conservative and very oriented toward a patriarchal society and patriarchal families. And my parents owned a farm and they owned a business, a farm machinery business, very agricultural. So that said, they gave birth to four children initially, all 2 years apart within a few months. And it was a boy. Yay, everything was in order. We had an heir. And then they wanted an heir spare, but would like a daughter. So number two was a daughter. Great. Number three was a daughter. Not so good. Then number four was a daughter. Even worse. So about 5 years went by, and this is the story I was told. Often I would hear this. It rings in my head often. I maybe heard it once or twice, but I hear it over and over again in my head. Is that mom got pregnant again, and when she was asked why, as very forthright Midwesterners are wont to do, perhaps, she said, well, we decided if we're going to have that other boy, we better be about it. And so that was their hope. That was their goal in going ahead and having a fifth child. So the day of my birth, when I came out a girl, I don't know exactly what happened. I can only imagine, and I can imagine it now because I've had children and grandchildren, when one desires one sex or the other. In this case, though, I do believe it was quite dramatic. It's something I've recognized through years of soul searching and therapy and books and trying to figure out what my issues are, trying to grow. And I realized that that would have been pretty devastating to them. And my mom's body, having gone through 5 pregnancies and being a farm wife and a bookkeeper and assistant to my father. And I believe it was deflating, although I didn't recognize this or the impact it had till I was much, much older. Right. And because I loved, when I was aware of myself, when I was aware of Rosey, I loved me and I thought I was wonderful and I loved being a girl. I loved being female. I felt feminine, yet athletic and intelligent and clever and talented. And I thought I rocked.
Yes.
And, life proceeded to tell me otherwise as far as being able to lead. I wanted to lead. I wanted to have a big role in life. And that I'll let you take it from there.
And this, and now people find out in advance, what the sex of their child is. So back in the days when Rosey was in the womb, that was before the time when it was all a surprise, right? You didn't know until the baby was born, which even I was meant to be a son as well. So I can relate in that way of my father wanting a son. I grew up in a very different time, but having that feeling of not being wanted in a way does impact us. And I believe that babies, even before they can speak, they understand, and we understand energy and all of that, which I think is a big impact on children. is wanting a certain sex and then it not being so. So how has that shown up in your life? You said through, lots of therapy and personal growth work, you have come to understand that has impacted you, that your parents wanted a son and that you weren't that. What were the challenges that you faced, as well as like, what is you spoke a little bit about the beauty of, you love being a woman. So what challenges would you say you have uncovered in being born a girl as you were wanted to be a boy?
Well, what I've realized is I was neglected, and it's pretty difficult to raise 5 children anyway. And then to be the 5th and several years younger than the other group, I was odd man out, odd girl out. And I remember instances like climbing on my mother's lap and her not putting her arms around me. And I had a sense of that, and I had this deep longing to be held and be loved. And then unfortunately, because I wasn't noticed, men that were around, or young boys that were around, started to treat me sexually abusively, and that I would be fondled and different things. And of course, I didn't understand this, and some of it felt good, and yet I knew something was wrong, and that continued for many years in different ways. And so I lost my sense of self, and I went into a survival mode, which was to please and be delightful, yet keep my distance. Hiding in corners, hiding in cabinets, whenever I felt there was danger. And then sobered from a delightful, happy, skippy little girl to a sobered, frightened little girl.
Right. Yes. And then, I know that you're a very extroverted person, and, you have that side of you that likes to be the center of attention. It sounds like, in high school, particularly, you found that place where you did feel seen and celebrated and, engaging in different activities in high school. So how do you think, coming from a very challenging household, how do you think you were able to stay connected to your essence and to who you really are as a you are a very loving, open, outgoing woman? Because so many people, as we get injured or growing up in dysfunctional households, we get very guarded and protected and hide who we are.
Yes. I think the first thing that actually happened even before high school is I was very fortunate to be able to become part of a theater troupe, and I wanted to be an actress. I wanted to be an actress from an early age, and I would do performances for my family. I would pantomime to popular songs and be very animated, and so that I had that in me, which came out because it meant I got positive response, I got attention, and then when I got into middle school, I became a cheerleader. And I was athletic and personable, and I learned to play the popularity game, to be kind to everyone, to not slight anyone, and get the vote. So in that way, I was able to take a leadership role. And then I even evolved to become, in a large school, become the prom queen. And these things gave me such wonderful self-confidence and a belief in that little girl that I believed in long, long ago started to shine, started to come through these layers. And so I got to be kind of the it girl, or one of the it girls. Right. And that I loved. The thing that was also still a challenge for me is, again, we're talking about the Midwest, Indianapolis Metropolitan School, large one. The biggest, most important thing anyone could be in that school was a football player. And to be the quarterback of the football team, or to be anybody that could score, was the best. That was the highest honor. And I wanted the highest honor. And I had a fantasy, constant fantasy of making a touchdown, of being on the football field and running with the ball and making a touchdown. And I did not have, although I was athletic, I didn't have the physical build or stamina to be a football player, even if they would have let girls. And it was frustrating to realize that to make it to the highest level required a penis, if I may say.
Yes.
And I didn't have that. So there was, even within that, and I'm so grateful for that. And I know many people have had horrendous high school experiences, and I was so lucky to have this uplifting one. And I really feel like that brought me forward. I had good friends, and I didn't feel like we were a bunch of shallow people. I felt like we had some depth to us. Grades were valued, doing well in school was valued. So I was able to pick up, it was good to be an intellectual, and it was good to be outgoing and present myself well.
Yeah. And so how do you think you were able to be growing up in a challenging family environment? And there are parts of your story that I know that we haven't even touched on, a lot of trauma and crisis happening throughout your childhood. How, what encouragement would you give a woman who's going through a challenge, whether it's, as a teenager or a grown woman, in those times where it's like, there's so much challenge? How do you tap into the power of who you are to keep believing that you can have what you want, right? To be outgoing and to be in a place of leadership. And what do you think the key was for you in being able to keep believing in yourself, even when you were facing such big challenges at home?
The first thing I want to respond to that is somehow luck or grace, because I was born with a certain personality, as we all are. And within that, I do believe I was given resilience. And in the resilience, I never gave up. I just never gave up. When I saw cheerleaders, I wanted to be a cheerleader. When I saw prom queens, I wanted to be a prom queen. When I saw people that got to go to the best parties, I wanted to go to the best parties. So, and some of it came from television, actually, watching the old-fashioned 50s and early 60s sitcoms and seeing wholesome families. And also I saw wholesome families in aunts and uncles. And so my extended family had some healthy families going on. And I just would see what I wanted and reach for it. So that's what I've been doing my whole life, is reaching. And also, as I once told you, feeling a little bit like whack-a-mole, in that, life would kind of, but no matter what, I pop back up. Now, I'll just jump forward a bit. I want out of the box. I want completely out of the box. I want freedom in my life and in my soul.
And how does that show up in your life now?
Well, I have managed to put myself in a position. Again, I don't know for sure how much is grace and how much is just grit and resilience and desire. Yet I now live exactly where I want to live, within a mile of my 4 amazing grandchildren that have turned everything about my family around. And I gave birth to their father. And I want to say somehow, I do want to take credit. I'm never quite sure where the lines are between grace and our own force and stamina. Yet I raised an amazing son, and he married an amazing woman. We have these children in our lives that are going to go forward in a way that I think is beyond my wildest dreams. And then I had another son who I had with my late husband, Glenn, who was a physicist and a ride. What a ride. And that's when I really got out into the world a lot in a different way, in a more middle class way, in an intellectual world. And he and I had a son who's handsome, brilliant, kind, everything I would want in a child. So I feel like my children, my grandchildren, have turned it around. And then recently I have married, I finally, at 63, married the man of my dreams.
Yay. So
Yes.
So, what would you say, especially to a woman who's going through the dark night of the soul, right? That moment when life and everything we know of ourselves gets burned to the ground. What would you say in those moments? What would you like to tell yourself when you were in those moments, or another woman who's in one of those dark nights of the soul, to give her hope? What would you share with her?
I would say, whenever possible, see the light. Whenever possible, keep reaching, even if you don't know where the light leads or what it is. Because I know in the darkest moments, there are times that's a complete crash down, and it can be months. It could be a year, 2 years sometimes before there's any light. And just be ready for it and look for it. And the minute you see it, grab it and go forward with hope. Have hope. Don't give up hope. I realize I've given up hope. Yet when something appeared that drew me, or if it was intention, because I would continue with affirmations, I would continue with reading books. When I was at my lowest and I felt like I couldn't do much for myself, I heard positive meditations on a loop. They would run 24 hours a day. And then somehow, kind of like inching out of the ashes, I'm still coming forth.
Yeah.
Yet I'm so much in the light. Not all the time, of course. Yet most of the time I live in the light.
Right. Which to me, because as I have teased our audience a bit, that I know a lot more about what has happened to you in your life. You're one of the most positive and optimistic people I know. And you've also, what I would say, been to hell and back many times. So, what is it that keeps you motivated, right? Like, in being open to even meeting the man of your dreams in your 60s, because often, right now I'm in my 40s. And so myself and a lot of people I know are going through, our midlife crisis, which I personally think is just an opportunity to look at our life and go, are we living in alignment with our hopes and dreams? And one of the things that I see is that people give up. In their 40s, they start going, oh, well, I haven't done it. So they either make a rapid change in their 40s to go after what they want, or they just become complacent. So how is it for you that in your 60s, you were like, I'm open to love. Even after all I've been through, I am committed to having the best relationship of my life?
That's a good question, because I feel like it's just in me. I just don't want to give up. I'm not ready to give up, even though I've said to myself, I'm done. Yet it doesn't last long. I keep going out. I don't mean just going out on dates. When I went out on dates to be out in the world, I go to family events, a play, meet up with friends, even when it hurt. Even when I was really, really blue, I still was as active as I could be. And it wasn't, I don't know for sure. I mean, I can't say for sure that anybody can do that. I don't know that for sure. But that would be my suggestion, is just don't give up. Don't give up. You will give up. But as soon as you're ready to not, just grab it. Grab that not giving up. Grab the light. And the other thing, from me working with you, I've asked for help all along the way. I started counseling at 19. I wasn't offered anything like that before I was on my own. And I was on my own at 17, orphaned, by the way. And but at 19, I had like $20 a week so I could go to the sliding scale counselor. And I read self-help books, and I have continued that my whole life of searching and looking for, I would say, happiness. I really want to be happy.
Yes. Yes, and knowing you, also your commitment to love is astonishing. You know, your love for yourself, for your beloved, for your children, grandchildren, for the people in your life. It's like, you know, and that's the thing that I think, especially when there's been so much loss, you know, loss of family members, loss of marriages, that it can be easy to protect yourself. And yet you continue to be vulnerable and say, love is the whole point. So how do you think that, and I know you've talked about not being sure if it's grace or grit, which I think it's both, you know, but how do you continue to be open to love even when the whack-a-mole keeps coming to?
Yeah, well, it feels really good. So it's its own reward. And when I give love, say, for instance, with my grandchildren, initially, when they're babies, there's more giving of love than getting back, but it doesn't take long to get a lot back. It's its own reward. It just grows and blossoms, and it's like a beautiful flower that just reseeds itself. So the more it's done, the easier it is. The more love I give, the more love I get, and then the more love I want to give, and so it just grows and grows and grows. And then go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, the other thing, though, that's been a challenge for me is learning the boundaries of that and the discernment of that, and when to be able. And that's, I think, has caused me illness, not to know that, to give love, assume I'll get it back, and sometimes not, or worse than love. And so now I'm learning discernment and boundaries.
Yes. So that leads wonderfully into my next question of, you know, now you were just married this year. Congratulations. And what is it that you've learned from all of your past relationships loss that you're really seeing bloom in your relationship with your soulmate now?
Oh, that's a good question, because I don't believe I would be the partner I am had I not gone through the things I've gone through in other relationships. And one of those is to give up my ego and to recognize my ego, and to when I'm concerned or troubled, look at what really matters. What really matters, taking things down to very basic. My husband's heavy-footed. When I want to sleep, I hear his heavy feet, and reframing it instead of, oh, I don't want to hear those heavy feet, I want to sleep in, saying, my wonderful husband is in the house. I am so happy he's here. I feel loved. I feel safe. I feel happy. Thank God for my husband. And then I go back to sleep. So that type of thing, and it's been used, the term's been used to me, reframing, has made a huge difference in making this relationship a healthy one.
Yeah. So I think that in the life challenges that we've been through, you know, it helps highlight our superpowers, but then there's also those challenges that we face, like our kryptonite as well. Like, what are those things for you that you really have to pay attention to not fall into old patterns or, you know, old wounding?
Well, I'm comfortable saying that I battle codependency, and so if anybody's read about that, it usually means somebody requires another person to give them validation, and then it often leads to wanting to control that other person. So as I recognize that within myself, I'm able to adjust, realize I am who I am. I'm Popeye the Sailor Man. That I am who I am, and within that, I'm going to make adjustments so that I can feel happiness and love, and those around me can feel happiness and love, and still remaining who I am.
And what do you mean by that specifically? Like, could you give an example?
Well, I think I've accepted the fact that I'm a highly sensitive person, and I've decided that's okay. So even just getting to that point, I used to fight the sensitivity, be ashamed of the sensitivity. Now I try to embrace it and just say, that's who I am. And within that, that's not bad. That's who I am. And I actually love many things about being highly sensitive. I think that's one of the reasons I do try, and I do have hope, and I am optimistic, because I see glimmers of it out there.
Right.
And so accepting who I am in that sense, and trying to smooth the edges, so that even if it's just me explaining to who I'm with, wow, I'm having a very strong reaction right now that's uncomfortable. Please bear with me. Instead of pushing that feeling down, or saying, why do I do this? The critical voice, the
Yes.
bossy voice saying, stop it, stop behaving like that, stop being like that. And I realized that voice is saying, stop being who you are. So being who I am and adjusting with it, and knowing that perfection is ridiculous and not fun.
No, no. So I'm in this inquiry personally, and I'd love your perspective. And, I don't think there's a right or wrong answer, but I find often with people that grew up in dysfunctional households are highly sensitive. And so I always wonder, for myself as well as so many of my clients that are also highly sensitive, is it nurture or is it nature when it comes to that? Like, do you think that growing up in a challenging household amplified that, or that you became more sensitive just to simply survive?
That's a very good question. I think I was born sensitive, and I think your word amplified's perfect. That the dysfunctional family, the survival instinct, pulling out any tricks we can to survive in dysfunctional situations, especially when we're working from basically fight or flight mode, that combined. So I'd say nurture nature together, in that I will say I was blessed to be a highly sensitive person, and it was exacerbated, there we go, with my life experience. So then I had to learn how to fine tune it.
Yes. And in what ways do you feel like your sensitivity now is a gift?
Well, I hope I can say right now it's great because I'm very sexual. So is that okay to say? And so a touch, a gentle, loving touch, just wows me and moves me. And I'm so grateful for that. I also feel like I have lots of empathy. I'm the vegetarian, except for fish, pescatarian then, I guess. And I don't want to see their face in the fish. So I have lots of empathy, and I like that. I like being a sensitive person in that sense, that I feel it makes me feel more alive and more connected to the world around me, especially the living world.
Yes. Yeah. One of my bodywork teachers said to me at one point, and she just completely rocked my world, where I was at a bodywork training, and, I was working with somebody who wasn't sensitive to me and my needs. And I ended up in tears in a separate room, and the teacher was there with me. And she said to me, which changed my life, literally, she said, I so relate to how you feel because I'm the same way. And she said, the challenge about being so sensitive is that you will feel things that other people don't feel. The beauty is that you will feel things that other people don't feel.
Perfectly put.
Yes. And so you see why in that moment, like before that, it was a burden to me. Like it was a problem that I feel all this stuff that nobody else feels. But when then she reframed it, right? She said, but then you also feel the things that other people don't feel. You feel the beauty, you feel the ecstasy, you feel the delight of the color of the sun on the leaves, or those kinds of things, which for me then opened a whole other appreciation for my sensitivity.
Yes, I agree. And that's basically what I'm getting at. I love the way she framed it, though. It's very well put.
Yeah.
And I think, though, now I'm letting go of it being a difficulty. However, I want to state I'm retired. I live very comfortably, which has been a long road to get to. And so it makes it easier to be sensitive because I can step away from situations other people often can't. A crying baby in the middle of the night, having to be at work at 6 o'clock because the project isn't completed, etc. You know, these pressures that hit, and when we're sensitive, are so much harder to conquer, you know, if we're exhausted or don't feel well. And so it is nice. Anyone who can, put yourself in the most comfortable situation possible.
Yes. So as we're completing our interview, I would love for you to share any, like if there's one takeaway that you hope that our viewers can take deeply, like a gem, what would that be that you want to share?
I would say, even at the very lowest, just say, help me. Say, help me to the universe, to your dearest ones, the ones you can trust. Say, help me, and receive it.
That's a big one. And for those of us who are very independent, I don't know who I might be referring to, is a big one, right? It's like being willing to be, and that's an incredibly vulnerable place, you know, to simply say, help me, and then to be open to receive it. So Rosey, thank you so much for being on the show with us today. Any final thoughts that you want to share?
I love you. I love what you're doing. I love this project. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for being with us. And for our viewers, thank you so much for being here. I'm Christelle Arcucci. This is the Forbidden Phoenix Project, which is supporting women to unleash our roar and tap into the power of our desire. We'll see you soon.